Hi there folks, and welcome to another informative episode of Crit Hit Reviews. The indie game we've selected for our latest rundown is Space Games' 2D physics-based puzzle platformer HackyZack. Amongst the handful of indie titles to be published by Humble Bundle, we're here to see if it's all it's hacked up to be. The premise of Hacky Sack is pretty simple, really. You need to hack a sack, or ball, into the stage's objective so you can move on to the next stage. And to complement that degree of simplicity is some very minimalistic and responsive controls, comprised of directional movement, a jump key, and a kick button. Which is why it sort of hurts my heart, and more importantly my fingers, with how unpleasant these controls can be in the long run. The reason for this is because the direction you kick the ball is directly tied to the direction you're moving. HackyZack doesn't offer an alternate means of aiming the ball, such as using the mouse on the PC or the second analog stick on a controller, or even the option of a button devoted to keeping your character still while you aim sideways, which can cause some issues, like falling over the edge of a cliff trying to kick a ball. Another great example of this would be when you need to make some diagonal wall jumps while simultaneously juggling a ball straight up so it doesn't ricochet uncontrollably or straight into an obstacle that breaks the ball or you and then forces you to redo the whole rigmarole from the start. That said, I will say that if I had to choose between keyboard or controller, I'd definitely choose controller, since whilst it was still a hassle to perform the weird combination of movement and ball aiming, especially when I wanted the ball to be moving in a different direction than I was, it was at least far easier to quickly swap directions and make diagonal shots on a controller. That and the repetitive motions were just a little bit easier with the controller directions. So, with all that said, let's get down to the game itself. In HackyZack, there's two main modes, though given that one is entirely reliant upon the other to access, we'll begin with the default goal mode. In goal mode, the player's tasked with punching the ball into a golden exit portal to proceed to the next stage. Whilst a simple enough sounding objective, this is complicated by the game's movement and aiming mechanisms, as well as a bunch of myriad obstacles and mechanics that are unveiled in HackyZack, such as walls that you can pass through but the ball can't, spiky red lines which destroy whatever they touch, be it you or the ball, portals, and even switches which activate or deactivate walls. What's more, the actual ball that's provided to the player in various stages may change, possessing effects such as slow motion trajectories, excessive bounciness, or even a ball that controls what another ball does. And yes, if either of those balls go over a bottomless pit, you lose and it restarts. All these factors in tandem can make the stages extremely challenging just to complete, and that comes without even factoring in that each of goal mode stages have a bonus objective. This optional task comes in the form of managing to kick your ball through the various icons present in goal mode stages, before you punt them through to the exit goal. A task which at times requires you to make your way through some exceptionally tricky bits of platforming and across the exact opposite way from the exit. That said, your reward for doing so is twofold, as each one acquired unlocks its related timed/target mode stage, and collecting a certain number of these objects also unlocks alternate characters, which more or less serve as skins since they all control in an identical manner. Target mode, as an aside, requires the player to punt the ball through a number of floating yellow diamonds scattered across the stages as quickly as possible, with a ranking system at the end scoring you between 1 to 3 stars, 3 being the best and 1 being what I averaged at. Other than that though, obstacle-wise and ball-wise, it's pretty much similar to goal mode. This is definitely one of those gameplay first oriented sort of games, to the point that the closest thing I could find to a story was the sometimes uncanny naming conventions for the world titles. Which is to say there really isn't much of a story, so on we go to the graphics! HackyZack is a 2D game with a simple but appealing background and environmental art. It's nice to look at, makes it fairly clear where boundaries and obstacles are, and avoids impacting gameplay in a negative manner. It also does a pretty good job of highlighting new mechanics, given that objects such as spikes, teleporters, different ball types, and the like are all fairly apparent just by looking at them, which is good because you don't really get tutorials. Lastly, the character designs are nice. which also is good since all the alternates you unlock are essentially just skins. Honestly, the audio was the part of this game that I enjoyed the most, and which managed to actually reduce a bunch of the stress I was continuously feeling from trying to aim the ball and from endlessly kicking it down pits or into spikes, or missing jumps and running into spikes. It's fairly relaxing and it's fun as far as soundtracks go, and was just one of the elements I just felt I could be consistently positive about. It actually really helped at times to just stop what I was doing, listen to the music for a bit, and find a bit of like much needed inner peace, and to sort of cool my jets and reevaluate what I was doing. It's a fantastic OST. Also, the actual sound effects for kicking the ball are actually different for all the character skins, and that was a neat detail to me. So, here we are at the final thoughts, and at the end of the day, whilst it's nice that this game had such a great soundtrack, it's less ideal that it stood out so much because it was the aspect of the game that I got the most enjoyment out of, period. Hacky Sack has an interesting premise, and plays around with its puzzles and physics in challenging ways, which even border on fun occasionally. But that's the issue. It borders on fun. Enjoyment was speckled throughout my overall experience with it, in large part due to the issues with its controls granting me no end to my frustration. The game felt like more of an endurance match for my fingers than a means of unwinding. The sense of challenge when I went into this versus the sense of satisfaction at clearing a level were disproportionate. I felt a momentary sense of relief, and then I'd hit the next level and be like, well damn it, and I'd be right back to the controls fighting me again. It's for this reason that I couldn't really see myself actually recommending this game to anyone, and would generally warn off all but the most stubborn of players who would enjoy this sort of game. Essentially, the game's a fumble for me. It's not quite a fail, since whilst there's nothing outright broken, and it could be fun when its design didn't punish me for its aiming mechanisms, I just couldn't really hack it in the end, personally. Whee!